Niigaan, thank you for talking to us today and fitting us in your busy schedule.
Yeah, Miigwech, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us about Wînipêk, Visions of Canada from an Indigenous Centre, and how it came to be?
So the word Wînipêk is, people might think it refers to the city, and we actually talk a lot about the city because it's in the center of a watershed, which eventually becomes Wînipêk, which is the lake. Cree people named the lake Wînipêk because of the algae in there, and the fact that everything flows into that lake, like going all the way to Alberta, Saskatchewan, northwestern Ontario, into the United States, even into the Northwest Territories. And so we have, everything ends up in Manitoba and becomes Wînipêk, that algae in the water. So it's about the ecology, it's about the land, it's also about all the humans and all the things that we bring to the table, the good, the bad, the great, the ugly. And really that's what Wînipêk is all about, the life in this place, all of those things, and really what makes complexity in the center of Turtle Island.
Yeah, here's the book right here. It looks great. I'm sure all of us are really excited for it. Wînipêk has been called ground zero for some awful things like the MMIWG crisis, but you also say it is ground zero for Canada's future. Can you talk about that?
So a number of years ago, a national magazine came to Manitoba, Winnipeg, and called us the most racist city in the country. That's not true. We've inherited the most amount of racism, perhaps here. I would actually say the North as well. But because of the proportional population, the fact that 1/5 of us here in Winnipeg are Indigenous, that means that we see Canada's racism. We see the impacts of the Indian Act. We see the impact of residential schools, and that turns into murder, missing Indigenous women and girls and Two-Spirit peoples, over-incarceration, the massive amount of Indigenous children in the child welfare system. But what happens is that because we are the first step of Canada's Confederation, the first province, the first treaty, the dispossession of the Métis, the imposition of the Indian Act. So we've been at this the longest of what Canada's violent policies have created. So therefore we've come up with the most amount of solutions at the same time. That's why you see neighborhood patrols. That's why you see youth who come out and vote and also go and redecorate and re-edit the statues in front of the Manitoba legislature. You see people who are dedicated Canadians, Indigenous peoples, working together, living together, and even marrying each other. And that's what you see in this place, and that's what the book's about.
So much history here in Winnipeg. It's pretty much ground zero. I've heard the Premier call it Niigaan Central here as well. We in the media see a lot of the ugly things, but what is giving you hope for the future?
The book really talks a lot about conflict. Like for instance, a lot of people might know that Manitoba's economy was built on the slave trade of African Americans in the colonies way down that originally funded the Hudson Bay Company that brought the fur trade here. People might not know that Winnipeg used to be an Indigenous city called Nestawea of 14,000 people, and then people might not know about all the different histories that come and coalesce in this place. Really, what the purpose of what this book is intended to do is to try to get us to think about what does it mean to live here, what does it mean to experience life here, and then what does the future of Canada look like, because Indigenous peoples are growing the fastest, and most of them are between the ages of 15 and 35. 20,000 of them came out to vote in the last provincial election, and that election was only determined by about 25,000 votes over about 12 ridings. I wonder who those people who made that impact was, and I wonder who came out of that election as the victor. That shows you what the future of Canada will look like all across this country, because Indigenous young people are growing everywhere. And yes, in places like Ontario, they may be 1 in 11, 1 in 10, but they will eventually become 1 in 7, 1 in 6. As we become 1 in 3, the North is already 1 in 2. And that means that Indigenous peoples are going to be a tremendous force in Canada's future, and we can see it right happening in Winnipeg. It's almost like a prophecy.
Lots of great points to make in this book. What do you hope people take away from this book?
Hope. And I hope that what people see is that we have to have hard conversations, and this book is all about hard conversations. Talks about seniors neglected in a downtown Winnipeg seniors complex. It talks about what is it like to see encampments pop up in this city. It also talks about the tremendous challenge around fires. We have a huge issue around fires in impacting disproportionately Indigenous peoples. But it also talks about the No Way Odena project, multi-billion-dollar investment. It's talking about the fact that Indigenous Indigenous peoples are entering beauty pageants. And it's talking about mermen in the north who are dealing with the suicide crisis in their community, and instead of putting their hands up in the air and doing nothing about it, they went out, put on merman tails, and tried to make their community laugh a bit. That's what it means to be a part of Wînipêk, and that's what it means to be a part of Indigenous life, the center of life, not just in Wînipêk, but I think the entire country.
Lots of great stories, and you know, I've been following your work a lot, but finally, where can people pick this book up?
They can contact the publisher, that's McClellan and Stewart. They can go to independent bookstores like McNally Robinson in places like Winnipeg or Saskatoon. You can also order from them online. I encourage everybody to go out to independent bookstores, but you can also go online to the really big platforms and order it from there as well.
Niigaan, thank you for talking to us today about your brand new book.
Niigaan, Giga Wab and Minwa.